In the Pokemon TCG, when a card releases, the card itself holds so little value to how actually good it is. For example, if Garganacl EX was released back in 2004, it would be considered broken and the best card in the game because the cards around it were generally less powerful in comparison. So, when new sets release, there's always a chance that a card that was initially overlooked becomes competitively relevant. However, the more interesting phenomenon is that Pokemon can, and often does, pull strings to make certain cards and decks better on purpose, despite the fact that they were bad all the way up until these changes. And I have proof that this isn't a coincidence. So, let's talk about it. So let's start by looking at some recent examples of cards that were initially either bad or unplayable, becoming good after a few set releases. The most obvious recent example is the case of Regidrago VSTAR. When released in Silver Tempest, Regidrago VSTAR always had the potential to be great. Its attack Apex Dragon, despite its weird energy cost, had incredible flexibility and an easy to fulfill restriction. You just had to discard some Dragon Pokemon and copy their attacks. Its VSTAR power also had incredible possibilities, since discarding cards could help get Dragon Pokemon in the discard pile to copy with the attack, and the secondary effect of getting any two cards back is super versatile, especially since it doesn't restrict the cards able to grab back to being the 7 cards discarded from the top of the deck. The card had a lot going for it, but there were 2 huge problems. First, man, that energy cost of 2 grass and 1 fire was really awkward. The only ways that consistently powered it up were Arceus V-Star and Gardenia's Vigor. The problems with these was that Arceus just had better partners and options that were more consistent, and since both V-Star powers were so strong, using one of them really hurt because it meant you couldn't use the other. Gardenia has never been good, because despite sharing some similarities to the Welder supporter card that was really good, Gardenia just doesn't do enough. First, it can only attach energies to the bench, which killed any flexibility since the Regidrago in the active couldn't be charged up, and since Regidrago has a 3 retreat cost, this just made it even more awkward. Second, it only draws you 2 cards, despite Welder drawing 3. This makes it really hard to justify using as your one supporter card for the turn, when oftentimes you would need to draw into more cards or use your supporter to discard Dragon Pokemon like Professor's Research would. The other problem with Regidrago upon release was the Dragon type attackers it could copy were just better in their own decks. Giratina V-Star was a top tier deck for a little while, played with the Lost Zone engine, and so was Hisuian Goodra V-Star, but it saw less success, still very respectable meta deck. However, 2 things happened in the Scarlet and Violet era that turned Regidrago into the best deck in the game. First, the Dragon type attackers that were added were actually really good. Altaria saw a very niche usage for its ability to put Pokemon to sleep. Noivern EX could wall out basic Pokemon with his first attack, and lock out your opponent's special energy and stadium cards with his second attack. But it was Twilight Masquerade and Shrouded Fable that truly sealed the deal. Twilight Masquerade's only Dragon-type Pokemon EX, Dragapult EX, has the broken Phantom Dive attack. 200 damage to the active, and you can spread 60 to the bench in any way you like. This is so good that now that Regidrago has fallen off quite a bit, thank you buddy, Dragapult is the best deck in the game, only because of this Phantom Dive attack. Shrouded Fable, however, really created the identity for the deck with the release of Kyurem. Trifrost does 110 damage to 3 of your opponent's Pokemon, but you have to discard all energy attached. This is unprecedented spread damage, especially since you can use this multiple times during a game, and this could completely wipe out the opponent's board. It also served as a standalone attacker against any deck that used a card containing the Colress name, like Colress Experiment or Colress Tenacity, due to his Plasma Bane ability, making the attack cost 1 colorless. Haxorus was also used pretty occasionally for both of its attacks, which could situationally be really high impact. The other, and arguably even bigger buff to Drago, was the addition of Teal Mask Ogerpon EX in Twilight Masquerade. Teal Dance accelerated a grass energy to Ogerpon, and then you would draw a card. So, with Energy Switch, it was consistent to fire off a turn to attack, and the extra draw power of Ogerpon made this consistency even stronger. At the 2024 Pokemon World Championships, Regidrago was everywhere. It dominated the top 8, and there were many more in Day 2. After Worlds, it would even win 3 events in a row, including the Latin American International Championships. In Surging Sparks, Alolan Executor provided a huge buff into the Raging Bolt matchup, guaranteeing a knockout despite a Bravery Charm. Regidrago is probably the most obvious example of Pokemon making bad cards good. Another Pokemon that sees play right now, however, went from 0 usage before its buffs to a bona fide tier 1 deck in the game. It's Snorlax from the Pokemon Go expansion with the infamous block ability. The combination of Echoing Horn and Boss's Orders could be used to trap a Pokemon with Snorlax's block ability preventing it from retreating, but it was way too easy to play around to justify building your entire deck around it. However, more and more sets that released, huge buffs would be given to Snorlax. Nest Ball and Penny from Scarlet and Violet base set are all must-have inclusions in the deck. Pokegear 3.0 was also reprinted in this set, which is an automatic 4 of in any Snorlax deck. Super Rod from Paldea Evolved was great for recovering your Pokemon. Giacomo from Paldea Evolved will also help with the Mew VMAX and Lugia V-Star matchups. However, it was really the releases of Pokemon 151 and Paradox Rift that truly solidified Snorlax as one of the best decks in the game. 151 introduced Erica's Invitation, which completely transformed the deck. The supporter lets you look at your opponent's hand, and if there's any basic Pokemon there, you put it onto your opponent's bench, and if you did so, you would switch it with their active Pokemon, putting it into the active spot, all at once. Now, with Echoing Horn and Erica, your opponent's Pokemon weren't safe anywhere except for inside their deck and prize cards. But with the Lore Module item, you could even snipe Pokemon from the deck by using the Lore Module to force them into your opponent's hand, and then using Erica to force them into the active. However, the release of Counter Catcher and Paradox Rift truly solidified the strategy. Since you would never be attacking with any damaging attack, Counter Catcher could be used almost the entire game to provide item-based gusting while spamming loads of disruptive supporters. Misfortune Sisters could mill item cards from your opponent's deck, such as Switch or Escape Rope, Canceling Cologne, and more. Sydney could discard special energies, stadiums, and tools from your opponent's hand, serving as a great check for jet energies in Lugia decks. Giacomo from earlier could discard special energy at a rate we have literally never seen before, great against Mew VMAX decks and Lugia decks that only play special energy. Penny can heal your Snorlax and provide other utility like picking up your Rotom V, which would be your draw engine with its instant charge ability. And the combination of Silene, Palpad, T-Mail's Cheer, and Pidgeot V made it so decking out was nearly impossible, since you could loop your resources with Silene and constantly shuffle Pidgeot into the deck with its ability. The first tournament of Final Form Snorlax was Gdansk Regionals, and not only did it do well, but it made the finals. Here, let me show you Game 2 of the finals. After a long Game 1 where the Charizard player on the other side couldn't really do anything, this happened.
Yeah, you just Arven for it, or just have it in your opening hand, and that's it. We see a concession from Erin, sparing us the time. Wukash is your Gdansk regional champion. He blocked everyone in his path, and he got the victory.
Very quickly, Stall became the most hated deck in the game. Decks, however, quickly adjusted to have a chance at beating it. Charizard players started adding Professor Turo's Scenario, as did Gardevoir decks. Other decks added higher counts of Switch and Escape Rope to counteract this. The whole meta unironically warped around Snorlax, and it truly changed the way decks were built. In future sets, cards like Accompanying Flute, a huge buff that can snipe Pokemon from the top 5 cards of your opponent's deck, Night Stretcher for more optimized recovery of your Snorlax, and the ace specs such as Secret Box, Hero's Cape, and Prime Catcher all now contribute to Snorlax still having a solid place in the meta, as a deck that continues to perform well. There were actually 2 in the top 8 of the largest Western Pokemon tournament ever, EUIC 2025, and it continues to play solidly at every single major event. But now that I've shown you some examples, it's time to answer the question. Why does Pokemon make bad cards good? The simple answer is this: because they want more diversity in the decks being played. Think about it. Snorlax, and just controlled decks in general, are the definition of Pokemon card diversity, since they are decks built around entirely different win conditions than the normal deck, making playing the game more unique and fresh, since every deck isn't playing the exact same. Regidrago VSTAR becoming good unintentionally made several other decks good because of their better matchup into Regidrago, the best deck in the game, such as Raging Bolt, Miraidon, and Roaring Moon, all of which had good showings at the World Championships, with Miraidon getting top 4 and Roaring Moon getting second. This was largely due to their good Regidrago matchup, since Regidrago was the deck to beat going into the World Championships. This is ultimately what made the meta more wide open than before. I honestly find it less fun to play when the same decks are dominating every tournament, and we just have to wait every year until they rotate out, with the addition of some new archetypes from the newest sets. But this way, Pokemon can not only keep previous decks balanced and add new archetypes safely, but they can also intentionally make the meta more diverse by giving old cards new life. At the end of the day, they all have the same purpose, of bettering the game. Subscribing would be greatly appreciated. I work super hard on these videos to get them out in spite of my schedule, so subscribing tells me my work has been worth it. Thank you guys so much for 200 subscribers. I really appreciate it. Let me know down in the comments section what you think of the current state of Pokemon and which current cards you would like to see buffed in future sets. Anyways, take care. Have a good one.